I address? Yeah, Lucas?
How to run away from the advertising business.
How to run away from the advertising, and what is your idea, Lucas? What's the real simple, basic model that you're thinking about?
That's get a business model that's working on the US and bring to Latin America.
Okay, so you're trying to bring that's right, the entrepreneurial spirit like a rocket back into Latin America. Okay, I remember from last night, okay. And you've got lots of options that go way beyond advertising, right?
Yes.
Okay, what other questions? What other, yeah, please.
After you estimated your possible revenue stream,
How do you,
after you already made like a possible revenue stream, you
Yeah.
made these assumptions, or assumptions you tested, then you made a smell test of like what
Okay.
actual numbers make sense.
okay,
How then actually to, like at the last stage, how to make sure that all your calculations or your these like assumptions are right?
well, here's the word adaptation. Your assumptions are never right for any period of time. They're right for today and maybe this quarter, but your models, look at Facebook, right? Facebook's had assumptions over the last 10 years. They're changing all the time. A lot of times they get those assumptions wrong. They think that we can prevent Instagram from working with Twitter. They think that we can change our model, right? So you're never done refining, but we can get into more detail,
But
okay?
then there is arises another one question.
Yeah.
All the time, when we actually give our idea,
Yeah,
and we're looking for funding, I will keep receiving the same question.
and what is
We
it?
need to have a simple linear way of making the revenue.
Okay,
And people don't want to listen about this multiple flexible approach that brings you
okay.
more
Well,
ways of.
Well, what they want is, what they're basically telling you is show me, don't tell me. And what they're saying is you can give me the coolest idea ever, but you better figure out at least one dependable revenue stream. Right? Because if you're talking about a web-based business, there's a lot of great web ideas out there. And so investors no longer will say, I'm gonna just invest in your great idea. Those days are done in general. So they want you to prove to them that you know how to monetize this idea. Right, just like LinkedIn, so you're sort of a next generation LinkedIn, right? And LinkedIn had to, on some level, right? I mean,
Different approach, a little bit.
it's a different approach, but let's stay with me for a second, okay? I mean, I think what you're trying to do is you're trying to help people figure out other people's skill sets and connect with other people, right? That's sort of a LinkedIn model, last I saw LinkedIn, okay? So if you're trying to do something like LinkedIn, look at them as a model. How did LinkedIn begin to monetize? They had to get to critical mass, right? But LinkedIn is a multi-sided business model. So they get money from people like you and I when we upgrade to a premium account, because we want to be able to send emails and we want to be able to, you know, look at who's been looking at our profile. But they also sell to corporations, because sales forces love LinkedIn to figure out how many degrees of separation they are from a potential target that they want to sell to. And they sell to headhunters, right? But that didn't all happen overnight. They evolved that model.
Yeah, but another one thing about this.
I'll tell you what, so I understand the question. Let me address it in the broader context, okay?
Also, just for questions, you
Yeah.
have the coaching sessions. After
Yeah, yeah.
lunch, we're gonna enter the coaching sessions, and then your team is really, it's your stage, you ask whatever you want to the coach.
Yeah. Gustavo,
How to make attractive a consulting company to an undeveloped community.
how to make a consulting company attractive to an undeveloped, you mean, who is the undeveloped community?
For example, communities that have resources but don't exploit it in a sustainable way. But you want to offer the service of a consulting company that will help them to develop the business.
And we're not talking about a business community, we're talking about a social community?
Yes.
Okay, that's a longer term discussion outside this classroom, I think, all right? All right, yeah, please.
Yeah, my question is more on how do you delay monetization as long as possible to create the public image that you want,
Okay.
without giving up control to greedy institutional investors.
All right, greedy. Is there such a thing as a non-greedy institutional investor? I don't know. So help me understand, I know you talked about more of a social impact venture last night, right? So why do you want to delay as long as possible? Because you want to be able to get by on a bootstrap model, and so therefore you don't want to show your cards too early, and you want to prove out the impact before you have to answer to others?
Well, so in a world of competition, if you give up control to greedy institutional investors, they're gonna make sure that you maximize
Right.
profit. And
But-
then
Okay, but here's the cool thing, right? So you're from what country are you from?
Norway,
Okay, how long, you're at Berkeley now doing a PhD, right? How long have you been in
30 years.
California?
30 years.
Okay, so, are you familiar with these AB 361 corporations? Do you know what that is? AB 361 Corporation is a newly formed legal entity that allows people creating social ventures to have a multiple bottom line so that you do not get sued. So if you want to have both the focus on profit and social impact, you incorporate as an AB 361, and then you're able to execute sort of across both of those dimensions. And there are increasingly large number of social impact investors that are no longer the Kleiner Perkins and the Sequoias and all these guys that actually want to invest with a blended return. And one of the great known ones is Jackie Novogratz, for example, right? But there's many more of those, and they're all over San Francisco now. So you don't have to maybe be as concerned about that. I'd rather you focus, as Nick said, focus on the problem you're solving and do it the right way. Don't do it out of fear of an investor that's gonna try to screw you. That's never a good thing to go into a business with fear, okay? Go in with optimism instead. Yeah.
What about?
This is the most socially conscious company in the room right now, helping people drink more Belgian beer. Now that is a business model I understand, okay?
Yes.
All right.
My question is also about timing of monetization. So you might want to make your service free in the beginning.
Yeah,
But then
okay.
also investors want to see some revenue. So when do you
Yeah.
decide to make it payable?
Okay, all right, that's a broader question. Okay, so let's take that as our overarching sort of, so this is a really interesting subject, and there's never a right answer, right? But there are business-to-business companies, and there are business-to-consumer companies, and we'll just keep it very simple for now, right? And how many people are familiar with the concept of crossing the chasm and have read some of Jeff Moore's work, which even though it's a 30-year-old book, there's still a tremendous amount of relevance to what you're doing, okay? Nobody, wow, that's amazing. So Jeff Moore, and I've spoken about this in some of our skills classes for my MBAs, right? What Jeff Moore talks about is this chasm, right? Because no matter what business you're building, I don't care if it's a festival business like Dugu, or it's a really cool share the bill business like Jasper, or a social business, you've got to first solve a specific customer problem. And you have to target, quote unquote, early adopters, right? People that are incredibly enthusiastic about your idea and are the first ones willing to adopt your idea, okay? And in the new vocabulary, in Lean Startup, they're called early evangelists, right? They're early adopter evangelists. They want to consume your product or service, and they also want to share with the world how cool it is, right? In this new social world that you guys obviously understand better than I do. So, regardless of what business you're in, business to business or business to consumer, you've got to find those early customers that are willing to take a risk on working with a startup versus working with a large established company. Now, in the business to consumer space, you're selling to an entity. It's normally what I would call a sale to a committee, right? It's a sale to people who have responsibilities for protecting the assets of their company. And so they are acting out of the interest typically of their organization. Now that could be a departmental sale, it could be a sale to a business unit, it could be a sale to a large corporation, right? Those tend to be very long considered sales cycles. And the chasm there is the chasm of adoption, okay? And what I mean by that is, if they're going to create a mission-critical business process around your solution, they're going to have to think long and hard about whether they want to take a risk with you. So there's one chasm for the business-to-business side, which is a technology adoption chasm. For those of you in the business-to-consumer space, it's a monetization question, monetization chasm. Goes back to your question. When do I start charging money for my service? So let's look at our good friend Mark Zuckerberg from Facebook, okay? So Zuckerberg made this comment that he probably regrets every day when he wakes up. We are free today and always will be free. Holy shit, now I'm a public company. How do I reconcile that? Okay? So Mr. Zuckerberg has repeatedly made forays into the market to try to monetize his 1 billion users, okay? And many times he gets repelled back because of violations of privacy and this sense that he is not treating this community with the same level of regard that he said he would early on. So right now there's a lot of controversy around a number of issues, but one of them is all these advertisers are feeling like now that Zuckerberg is saying that we're only going to share your posts in a much more limited way, advertisers fear they're being coerced into paying for, getting to a larger number of users, right? This is the challenge when you create a large user base early and you don't figure out how to monetize it. So he spent $1 billion on Instagram, and of course he's now urgently trying to figure out how to monetize Instagram. And I think you all know the controversy that ensued about a month ago with Instagram, right? They're going to basically provide your pictures and all of your data for free in advertisements. That didn't go over so well, all right? So the bottom line is that the first thing you have to understand is you've got to stay true to the ethos that you put out there, right? So monetization chasm versus a technology adoption chasm. Second thing that I think is important to understand is that in the world of business to business, the freemium model has become increasingly important, just as it has on the consumer side. And I think most of you know what I mean by a freemium model, right? You use Dropbox, you use LinkedIn. I'm going to give you something of value for free, with the hope of creating a large enough community of users that want to use my service, and then they're willing to pay me some premium for some incremental capability that I've decided I can't live without, right? So it used to be heresy to say, I'm going to give away a product for free in the business context. There was an old joke, we lose money on every sale, but we make it up on volume, right? And people would laugh at that. Now it's actually true. You actually do make it up on volume, because when you build a large community of people and you continue to layer new capabilities on your service, some percentage will pay for them. And in that model, right, it turns out that if you get to a certain scale, a lot of open source software companies do this, where they build up a large enough base where you really only need to, okay, thank you, Ken. 2 minutes, 2-minute drill, okay. No huddle offense, okay? So the bottom line is in that scenario, you only need to necessarily grab about 2% of that audience in order to actually create a profitable business at scale, okay? So there are many different approaches. We'll talk about them more in the breakout session. But a lot of you are talking about multi-sided markets. So Duke is talking about a festival site. The first people that are likely to want to be on that site are people that are managing these festivals, okay? They're going to want to make sure their festivals are broadly promoted. Over time, what will happen is more and more people like you guys that love to go to music festivals will go on the site, and as their demographic increases, there's a natural tendency to sell tickets through that site. There's a natural tendency to advertise through that site, to sell services, hotel rooms, etc. So, you're building this thing in pieces, okay? For somebody like you, right, you're dealing with understanding people's skill sets, right? So who are the people that care about that? Headhunters care about that. Corporate recruiters care about that. Consultants care about that, right? Well, they're all customers, okay? To me, if someone's paying you, if a corporate recruiter is paying you for your service, wouldn't you call that a customer? I would call them a customer, okay? That's how I would kind of view it. If they're paying you for that service, they're your customer. Okay? Okay. So, the last thing I guess I'll say is that Dropbox is an extraordinary model of understanding virality. Okay? Because what does Dropbox do? Dropbox gives you an extraordinarily reliable service, and they give you more capability when you have a friend start using the service, right? So there's this viral coefficient that Dropbox really understands, right? So the ability to drive virality in this new social world is an incredibly cost-effective and powerful way to do marketing. So we'll talk more about this in the breakout session. Just a couple of things to think about as we go into the discussion later today. Cool.
Thank you. I love the note on virality and network effects. That is very powerful. Also, if you think about WhatsApp, how many people use that now, and how they spread out the word just by, well, you forcing your friends to use it because you use it.